So, have you ever really stopped to think about how massive fortunes are built? I mean, really built. It's not about luck, it's about strategy, it's about control. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to deconstruct the actual blueprints, the playbooks used by black billionaires to engineer their power. Let's dive in.
And really, this is the whole idea behind this explainer. Power isn't something that just happens by chance. It's engineered. You know, these paths to the absolute top, they aren't accidents. They're carefully, meticulously built systems. So today, we're going to break down the different maps, the different routes they use. Okay, so let's get into our first group. We're calling them the foundation builders. And the name says it all, right? These are the titans who get their power by controlling the stuff, the real, tangible, physical world. We're talking about the absolute bedrock of an economy. Think about someone like Aliko Dangote. This is his playbook. You're not building the next trendy app. No, you're building the things a nation literally cannot function without. You might start out just trading stuff like commodities, but pretty soon you realize, wait a minute, the real power isn't actually making this stuff. When your cement plants shut down, entire economies can grind to a halt. You don't get a round of applause for that, but you get something way more valuable: leverage.
All right, next up is the resource master. And yeah, this one is literal. They dig deep into the earth. They're the ones controlling the extraction of gold, platinum, you name it. Now this is heavy duty, often contested wealth, right? It's usually in high-risk places. But here's the thing. When you control the supply right at the source, you get a seat at tables. Tables you were probably never supposed to be invited to in the first place.
Okay, think back for a second. Before we had all the streaming services and fintech apps, what did you need? You just needed a signal. That's it. And pioneers like Mike Adenuga, they looked at a whole continent of millions of people who weren't connected, and they saw the opportunity. So they built the towers, they laid the fiber. And once people rely on your network for literally every call, every text, every bit of data, they're not going anywhere. That's permanent power. And it's almost invisible.
Now, this next path is all about being invisible. These are the quiet infrastructure titans. They're not selling you a cool new product, they're selling access. They own the airports the planes land on, the port terminals where all the cargo moves through. And the money here, it isn't volatile like a tech stock. Nope, it's pretty much tied to time and population growth. It's power without all the noise and, well, it's money without the mood swings.
So if you pull it all together, here's the key takeaway for this first group. The foundation builders are all about securing choke points in the physical economy. Right? Whether it's the cement that builds the cities, the minerals pulled from the ground, the signals zipping through the air, or the port that brings in all the goods. They take these tangible things and turn them into real, lasting power.
Okay, so we've talked about the physical world. Now let's shift gears and move into the intangible. Our next group, the system optimizers, well, they don't build with concrete and steel. They build with capital, with code, and with data.
And right away in tech, you see two completely different ways to play the game. You've got the founder. Think of Tope Awatona with Calendly. Man, that path is brutal. Why? Because it's honest. Your product either works or it doesn't. There's nowhere to hide. You're totally exposed. But then you've got the capital allocator, like Robert F. Smith, and he is playing a completely different sport.
So here's the playbook, and it's basically capitalism with all the emotion stripped out. First, you find these kind of boring but totally essential software companies. You buy them. Then, you strip out every inefficiency you can find, centralize everything, and maybe you quietly raise the prices. Then you just sit back and let that sweet, sweet recurring revenue stack up. There are no crazy bets here, no moonshots. It's just a machine, and it's designed for one thing: to print money. And then there's a whole other level, the data strategist. Think Alex Karp at Palantir. These guys aren't selling software to you and me. Nope. They're selling insight to governments, to intelligence agencies. Their software gets woven so deeply into things like military logistics or counterterrorism that trying to rip it out would be, well, basically operational suicide. Their power is right next door to the power of the state itself.
Okay, that brings us to our final group. And these people, they understand something fundamental. They know that the most powerful assets in the world aren't physical things, and they're not even lines of code. The most powerful assets are narrative and belief. We're talking about the culture shapers.
Tyler Perry is the perfect example here. He understood this dynamic perfectly. See, if you get cast in a movie, you're essentially asking for permission to be there. But if you own the studio, you own the land it's on, you own the payroll, you're not asking for permission anymore. You're the one who gives it. It's a huge shift from just shaping a single story to actually manufacturing the entire reality where those stories get made.
And this idea is central to the brand idol too. Think about Jay-Z, think about Rihanna. For them, the art, the music, the fame, that's just the entry point. It's the door, but it is not the destination. Once they're through that door, they take all that cultural attention and they convert it into cold, hard equity. In liquor brands, in cosmetics, in tech companies. I mean, Rihanna's Fenty, it wasn't just about selling makeup. It was about capitalizing on a huge gap in the market for inclusive products. And any strategist will tell you, finding a supply gap like that, that's how you print money.
And, this whole strategy, turning influence into ownership, it goes way beyond music and movies. You see it with the athlete investor. Michael Jordan, LeBron James. They learned early on that owning a piece of the brand is always going to beat just getting a salary from it. Every single time. And then you have a totally different flavor. The real estate compounder. They build that quiet, generational wealth, not with fame, but with patience, and a portfolio of tangible, boring assets.
Okay, so we've looked at the different paths, the different playbooks, but now we need to pull the lens back. We have to look at the bigger picture, at the systemic reality that really shapes why these specific routes are taken.
So if you add it all up, the combined approximate wealth of the billionaires we've been talking about, it's around $90 billion. And that sounds like a massive number, right?
It does, until you realize that a single founder, just one, in other demographics, can have a net worth that eclipses that entire number, all by themselves. And that fact, well, that points to a much, much deeper truth about how this all works.
And here it is. This isn't about a gap in talent. It's a systems gap. What we're seeing, these paths we've laid out, they're strategic responses to a reality where access to things like capital and credit was never evenly distributed. And you have to understand, when the downside of failure is truly existential, you don't make wild gambles. No, you secure choke points.
And you can see this reflected in where these paths are concentrated, right? In an emerging economy like Nigeria, there's still a massive opportunity to build that foundational wealth from the ground up in things like cement or energy or telecoms. But in a really mature market like the US, the system tends to favor routes that plug into already established networks, things like media, capital, and tech.
So if there's one word that unifies all of this, it's control. Control of production, control of infrastructure, control of distribution, or control of the narrative. These fortunes are not accidents. They are engineered. Look, at the end of the day, these aren't just success stories to feel good about. They are maps. They are blueprints for how power works. They show the different risks, the sacrifices, the timelines that it takes to build something that truly lasts. So now that you know the routes, the real question is, what do you see differently?